This is Family Electric Ghost, and we're live with Judy Rodman for the first time on the program. So thank you for coming on the program today.
I'm looking forward to it.
So we do have a sponsor. We are on Newsly as an audio podcast. So what Newsly does is they convert video to audio. So go to www.newsly.me, use coupon code GHOST2021. That will still work. You'll get 1 month free premium subscription. That's GHOST2021. You can get 1 month free premium subscription, and you can stop scrolling and start listening. So that's their line. So now we're going to put up your ticker up on the banner. So everybody who wants to, be interested in what you're doing, JudyRodman.com/newsletter, sign up. That'll stay on the whole length of the program. So we're just happy to have you on the program. It's really cool to meet new people all the time. That's part of podcasting. That's what we do.
Oh, I know. I know. And the chats are always so much fun and interesting with people that have also done the journey like you have.
Well, you're an award-winning vocal coach, recording artist, performer, speaker, author, songwriter, studio producer, blogger, and podcaster like yourself. And so you've specialized in professional singing and speaking voice. You've got 5 decades of professional success. And your students have appeared on like Today Show, Letterman, The Voice, American Idol, the Grammys, CMA, MTV Awards, New York Times best-selling list. So you've really had an impact.
Well, it's been a blast, and it's funny. My journey, I never intended to be a vocal coach, but it's been some of the most fulfilling part of my journey is helping other people, reach their dreams. So.
Yeah, I think that I found is like I'm a musician, but I started becoming a producer in the last like 4 years, and I feel like being a producer is like being a music teacher. Like so when you're working with other artists, like you're teaching them basically how to apply music theory to make somebody sound better. So you're teaching them all kinds of techniques. Like you could rearrange that, you could use different voicing, you could do different chords. So it's like I pay more attention to the instruments. I do things with the vocals, like shadow vocals, like Peter Gabriel loves to do like shadow vocals on albums. Like so, he would layer and layer. He's a very progressive rocker, and I'm very interested in that kind of thing. What the old school progressive rockers used to do, even like what George Martin used to do with the Beatles. But it's so like one of the questions I always ask people, like what was when did you first get into music? Like what age?
I think I've been doing it my whole life, literally, like from the age of 2 or 3 was when I first sang with my dad, who was an amateur musician, and we sang on a radio show and all that. So I really grew up with a family that always sang. And as each sibling would come along, I was the oldest. And so as each sibling would come along, I would be put on a different harmony part. So I really grew a sense of harmony and pitch and ear training and all that. And then my father taught us all little guitar chords and things. And my grandfather taught me piano on an old piano that the middle E, acoustic piano, that the middle E was missing. And so that was the age way before digital. So I've really been in music forever. Yeah.
Well, I'm a child of the 70s, and I had a best friend that had one of those home pianos that was always out of tune.
Oh yeah.
And I tried to do something on it. It's like this thing's way out of tune. So that's really cool because I've been interviewing since 2016. I've interviewed like over 140 artists, and a lot of them will say what you said. They actually start very young. Most creatives I've talked to in the music field, I seem to have done, they're 2, 3, 4 years old. They mentioned, almost everybody I've ever interviewed. And then maybe drop it and then come back to it. But and then they start taking it seriously when they get like older. But you see, how long were you taking it serious? Like all through your whole life? Or was there a period where you really started to focus and say, this is what I'm going to do?
Well, I think doing and being are kind of interesting words here because I've always been a musician, always. But as far as being a professional musician and doing it seriously as a career, I
Yeah.
started that when I was 17 years old. I did my first national spot for Gino's Pizza Logs
Oh, wow.
in Jacksonville, Florida. Yeah, so that was the first time I actually made money with my voice. Yeah.
And that's really interesting for people because a lot of what people do today is they kind of getting into sync licensing. Because like the way the industry
Right.
works is
Right.
like a lot of artists, the only way you can really be successful, because after Napster and after all these streaming services, like the amount of money you get paid is like you got to be more inventive. Like I'm actually working on an independent video game maker out of South Africa, working on like a 2-year project to do a sound for a game. And
Yeah.
that kind of stuff is the stuff that makes me more money than my Spotify. It
Yes.
makes me it
Yeah.
makes me more money than even doing gigs. So, like, you have to think about, like, okay, you gotta be open to different ideas. So
Oh my
it's really
goodness, your creativity has to go into multiple streams of income if you're in, if you're in the business of any of the arts, because in the ancient old days, they used to have patrons of the arts. And then you
yeah,
used to have labels that
supporters.
really did support, the artist because there wasn't a whole lot of competition since there were just like the big four. So it's just not that
Yeah,
way anymore. And there's lots of good about that. But then there's, definitely.
but
It,
it's
it,
bad where you don't get to advance, you had a Geffen
Yeah,
record,
right.
it's like, "We're gonna be
You
the
gotta
only label, and we're gonna give people the space, take 5 years to do something, take 2 years to
right,
do something." Now today,
right.
like, you gotta do it right away. You gotta be,
Yeah,
already on TikTok and hitting
mhm,
1,000,000, and then they'll pull you in, you know?
exactly. What they're looking for is your fan base. I mean, really, that's what they're looking for. Just like what live venues are looking for is butts and seats. So it's like really, that's where creators have a little trouble because the creative part of us that is doing what we do because we love it. That's not the
Mhm.
business part of us. And if when
Yeah,
we have
no,
to put those
totally.
2 together of our brains and our hearts, it kind of butt heads sometimes, or butt hearts, maybe is the way to say it.
Yeah,
But what we have to realize is instead of whining, what we have to do is get really good at both the craft and the business. And the current business, not the past business or the dream of the business, but the real business. So if we understand that, then we can dream with legs on.
that's true, because, I mean, I'm a creator, and I've been doing it because I love it, but I started getting the podcasting because that started allowing me to monetize what I'm doing.
Mhm.
And
Uh-huh.
it also allows me to meet people. In an age of
Right.
the COVID, it's like I get to meet people all over the world. I've talked to people in South
Yes.
Africa, Argentina, Brazil, Japan. I'm collabing with people in Japan and
Yeah.
Italy, all over
Mhm.
the world, because they just opened it up. It's like, "Whoa, you people, oh, you're locked down. You can't do anything." That's very small-minded. It's like, I'm working with somebody in South Africa, and I'm in New
Exactly.
Hampshire, right? And I'm working
Exactly.
with another person in Japan, and I'm in New
Mhm.
Hampshire. I'm in my room, and I'm
Yeah.
still working on something there. So you don't have to, you can open up your mind and say, "Well, there's other things you can do." But,
Mhm.
so one of the things that I'm looking at, like, to being a trainer,
Mhm.
vocal trainer, is that what's the requirements for, like, a successful vocal career? 'Cause you actually show people what they need to do. So maybe you can
Mhm.
start with, like, the basic of
Well,
that.
I've got a big 3 that you have to have a professional career in voice. One is vocal health, because if you lose your voice, it doesn't matter what gigs you
You're
book
done.
for, you're in trouble, right? Or you can do some gigs, but you have to really limit it and all that. So vocal health is one. The second thing is vocal ability, because
Mm,
that is what gives you the ability, I'm talking about range and resonance and
mhm,
the ability to control your voice for precision, for pitch and all that. Vocal ability, that's two. And the third one is what I call vocal impact. But what I mean is communication skill, because
mm,
if you've got the best sounding voice in the world and you've got plenty of vocal ability and your voice is pretty healthy, well, you might win American Idol, but then you're done. So if you really want a career in it, you have to understand what the voice is for, getting back to what the voice is really about, which is delivering messages that get a response. It's not
Yeah.
enough to just deliver the messages, because that's like a narcissistic sort of, let me give you my truth. But the value of the voice is in the strength of the response to it. And
That's
when you
true.
can wrap your head, when you can wrap your head around that, then you can put everything into perspective. Even if you do have a limited range, if you're really delivering messages that get responses, you know how to tell a story and you know how to
Yeah.
deliver a message, then your voice is maybe more valuable than, a lot of times it is more valuable than your background singer who can sing reams above you as far as range goes, but
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
can't reach the heart like you can. So, yeah. So
But
those are the three things.
I was always like impressed with singer-songwriters because it started to change the game, right? Because my
Mhm.
dad was like a big fan of like Sinatra and Nat King Cole,
Ah,
and they're
yeah.
really great singers, right? So he had a bunch of, records, real records, vinyl, and he had all the Motown stuff, and he had all the Stax stuff, and it was all really vocal. People had like amazing voices. There was like an age in music where the only like the gate is you had to have that great tenor, you have great
Yes,
soprano.
and editing required blood, right?
Yeah, you had to do it. You had to have it, and
Yeah,
then you get a guy like Dylan. Dylan comes in to Columbia, and he's doing it based on the quality of his writing. And then he
right,
had
not
a
his voice.
style to his voice, but it wasn't anywhere near what the old time standards were,
Right,
right? At all. And then you get a
right.
guy like Lou Reed, who's a spoken word poet, and he was able to get his voice out there, and it's very unique, but he
Mhm.
doesn't have a lot of range. But
Right,
it didn't really matter because he learned how to use it, what he
exactly,
had, to the max capability of it.
right. They take you singers like that, and this is what stage presence is. They take you into the scene of the song like a movie does, or a
Yeah.
great TV show, like an actor does, and they're
Mhm.
doing it by being really real within that scene. And, if they know how to do that, then yeah, they still need vocal health and vocal ability to fully do what they wanna do,
To actually be healthy
just
and
as speakers
tour.
do as
Yeah.
well, right? So they do need that, but I agree with you. The most important thing is vocal impact or messaging impact. Yeah, like
Yeah.
it's creating a universe within that movie scene right there of that song.
Well, I always liked the term sound painting, and I was
Oh, I like
watching some
that too.
documentaries. It comes from, like, George Martin. He was talking about the
Mhm.
Beatles and Sergeant Pepper, and he said, "Well, I coulda recorded them like they were in Germany, and they would sound just like a live band." But then I said I was doing all these Peter Sellers records, and I was doing all this overdubs and effects and tape loops, and the Beatles actually heard the Peter Sellers records that he had been doing. And they
Oh,
said, "Well, what
wow.
if we took those, techniques and used the
Yeah.
studio like Monet, right? Let's say we're gonna actually do something that we can't do live, right? We
Mhm.
can't do Sergeant Pepper exactly live because it's something that's a studio creation, and it's an idea that George said was a sound painting." And then Hendrix on, our, Electric Ladyland said the same thing when people asked him, "Well, what are all these bird sounds and ocean sounds and all this stuff?" And he
Mhm.
said, "Well, it's a sound painting." And now
Yeah.
I took that to heart. It's like, yeah, that's a good way because you can be as a musician, you can be a storyteller, you can
Mhm.
be like a screenplay writer, and you put people into that scene.
Right. You know what? It's like being a voice painter.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
definitely
you're painting the scene with the way you're saying things, or singing things, and, the inflections that you give to them is way more important than how many vocal licks per inch that you can deliver.
yeah. So how can you change your voice to be a better communicator? Like, what are some of your techniques for that?
That falls into that second category, which is, the vocal ability, and what I find that's really important with changing sound is changing the shape and, movement of of your throat channel. And
Mm,
the way the throat channel, because that is the route through which the laryngeal vibration from, when you make a vocal sound, by your vocal cords, they go on and vibrate the larynx, and then they need to reach the resonation zones in the bones of your face and your sinuses, and sometimes people even say in the sternum here or the trachea, but these are like your woofers and tweeters, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
if you can't reach all of your EQ, then your voice is going to sound like a little cheap instrument rather than a big expensive
Big,
Stradivarius.
yeah, so
Yeah,
you get the bigger,
right.
I guess you get some of the
So,
Motown singers, like, had the really deep, like, baritones,
mhm.
and then you had the guys that were really good at the falsetto,
Right, but if
and they could
even
project
those
it.
people, they can, but and it does, the size of the instrument does matter, and the density of the cartilage and all that. But even, anybody can have a very thin sound, or they
Yeah.
can have a very rich sound.
Oh,
And
you're
what
talking
and the way you open that up and change it is, that channel opens up, down, and back. So when you use I language, it changes your voice so much that if you're on the phone with me, I know whether your eyebrows are moving or not.
Oh, wow.
It changes everything. And so in the studio, a lot of times people won't use their eyes because, well, they're in the studio, they're not looking at anybody. So I get
Mm.
them moving their eyes, and all of a sudden there's more feeling in their sound. It's more interesting because they can reach different EQ
Oh, yeah, 'cause
resonation spaces, right?
I've seen singers that, like, they memorized it in their head and they got their
Yeah.
eyes closed,
Yeah.
and then
Well,
they got other
you can
yeah.
close your eyes and still use the orbs of your eyes. That's okay. But you
Mhm.
have to move. And the reason is if you lift your eyebrows, and your audience can do that right now. If you lift your eyebrows, you'll notice your nose opens.
Oh, so you get
Well,
more
that's
air.
gonna change the
Yeah.
tone because
Yeah.
the larynx can reach those resonation areas up in the ceiling. Another place is down, which is tongue and jaw positions. If you drop your jaw when you're talking, rather than talk from your jaw being tight, it sounds completely different.
Wow, 'cause
So your tongue needs a free ride with your jaw.
that's
And
interesting.
then the other way the throat opens is back, which means head back just a little bit like that. It's much more confident feeling. If you're walking, lead with your with your knees rather, instead of your nose. And so your head is balanced over your heels and your tailbone. Even with this mic situation that I've got the mic in here. I walk in here with it so that my head is balanced over my heels instead of walking into it like that, leaning over into it.
Yeah.
So, and you can hear my voice change when I do that,
Yeah,
and there's
'cause
a
I
lot of
stand
vocal
up. I
frying.
have actually a
Yeah,
standing desk with
I
a
am too.
a
I do
frame,
too. I do too. In
but
fact,
I
I'm using it
found
right now.
yeah, I found that that works a lot better for me,
Yeah.
but also it's interesting 'cause I started in music as a clarinet player,
Oh,
so
yeah.
I had to learn, like, the breathing and how to use my
Mhm.
tongue and how to do there's a lot of techniques when you're playing a woodwind
Right.
that the breath control is very important, like, your
Mhm.
tongue control is, like, how you actually get some of the trills and stuff to happen. So, when I started to get into vocals, I said, "Well, if I take some of these things I was doing on the clarinet," and then, it seemed to work.
Yeah.
And I
Right.
just found it just by saying, "Well, if I apply this
Yeah.
woodwind to, like, talking or singing, it seems to work in
Well,
different ways."
our reed is right in there.
Mhm.
It
Yeah,
acts
it's
like a
just
reed,
interesting.
right?
Yeah, and the resonance, like, I'm a synthesist, right? So all my synthesizers have, like, cutoff and resonance and all kinds of modulation, and I can
Yeah.
understand it on that. So I can
Yeah.
say, "Oh, I need to apply that to my own voice because 'cause I'm
Uh-huh.
spending time on the voicing of all my keyboards, but, like,
Mhm.
I control that resonance, but I need to understand how I can control my own vocal resonance, not just my tone
Well,
on my mode."
right, when you start using your eyes more, even more, you may notice that you have access to more than you thought. And the other
Yeah,
thing
that's a
is
good
this, as far as breath goes, uh, and this has to do with vocal health. Air is what works the voice, of course, the engine that moves the voice, air going through your vocal cords and then setting up alternate resonation in these places. But uh, air is also your voice's worst enemy. It's like atomic power. A little bit can power the grid, but a little too much. So
it
what
causes
we need
bad
to do is
results. You get bad
control that
results.
breath. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
So you control your breath, and the secret to breath control is wide ribs at the bottom. And if your head is back so that your throat's more open, because when your head comes back a little bit, that opens up the back part of the throat channel. Well, your rib cage is also open, which means your diaphragm is stretched like a drum head needs to be, or trampoline. And
mm,
that's what controls breath. Anything that drops your rib cage down, like your arms down like a rib anchor, or your head forward where your rib cage collapses, that's a saboteur for your breath control, which is what works your vocal control.
wow.
So it goes together. I've I came up with this method when I started teaching, and I'm so excited about it because it's so synergistically amazing in the way that it works with voices. And that's a three-stranded cord of techniques that work the breath, compression breath, where you have breath support and breath control centered in the pelvic floor. And then the second, so I call that power. And then you send your voice, the voice through an open throat channel. And I call that the path that you need to send your voice through so that it can resonate. It can gather all this extra characteristics when the throat channel is open and movable. And then performance, meaning communication skill. So if you put together breath, path through the open throat, and performance, they all affect each other too. If you're really talking with somebody and not just thinking about talking with somebody, you're going to be using your eyes more, which means your throat's going to be more open. And
Mhm.
if you really are confident, or you're acting as if you're confident, even if you're not, your rib cage is going to be more open because your stance is going to be different. So you're going to communicate with more authenticity and confidence and all that. So it's synergistic. It all goes together.
Yeah, I found it because I used to be an audio-only podcaster, and I switched to the video,
Mhm. Uh-huh.
and I like the video better because I think it allows me to actually see people. I do hand
Yeah.
movements.
And respond. Yes. And
I
respond.
yeah, I'll do things. I can even see my hands moving all over the place, but
Yeah.
yeah, I found, I like to stand up, and it was before I was like sitting at a chair doing an audio podcast. I didn't really see my guest. I didn't see their body movement. I didn't see how they were reacting to what I just think it's a better experience to actually use all the senses we can. Like, so if I can use the video, then I can do more, and
Right.
it's actually helped. And I do take to heart what you're saying in terms of like using your eyes and using your body in the right positions to get the result that you need with your diaphragm and your different positions. That makes a lot of sense to me
Mhm.
because I'm somewhat of a technician. I'm a technical guy, so with like learning how to get my synthesizer to resonate right, I'll
Yeah.
read all the stuff to
Yeah.
make it do it. So
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
I put the same level of effort into my voice.
Right. Right. And then when you got a professional career, sometimes you have to not see who you're talking to. That's in the studio,
Hmm.
or, if doing a recording project or something, and also on the phone.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so what I tell people, I get people doing then, is remembering and conjuring back up their body language, facial language, hand gestures, everything that they would be doing if the person really was right in front of their eyes. You can't do that unless you've actually, to have the experience of being on stage, talking to an audience, or you know, to have the experience, and like you say, doing a video rather than just the audio, you can bring that in your imagination and create a visual experience for people even when they can't see you or you can't see them. And it's a skill, but you can learn it. You can
Yeah,
on purpose use it.
yeah. 'Cause I've tried to. I mean, I still do audio podcasts for people who don't want to do video. 'Cause I get
Yeah.
some guests that don't want to do it, so I try to. I got this mic, which was a way
Yes.
better mic than what I usually had.
Uh-huh.
Like, when I first started, I was just using the PC mic, and well, that wasn't doing it. And so I need to use something way better. So then, I started using mixers. Then, so I have a lot of technical stuff that's helping me. I've got
Yeah.
preamps, other things I'm
Mhm.
using. And the weird thing is, like, like you have, well, not a weird thing, but you say, how do you find your own unique voice? Like in my case, I did not like my voice when I first started doing music. I was a musician, but I never sang until like 5 years ago.
Mhm.
And I used vocoders or vocal transformers from Roland that actually
Mhm.
could change the pitch and change the format and change all aspects of my voice. I would create characters. So I
Yeah.
use these synthesizers to create male, female characters, like weird characters that alien
Yeah.
ghost. And I
Mhm.
played with playing these like characters like an actor. And
Mhm.
then eventually I got confident enough to use, like, I finally started using a preamp with my male voice, my naturally occurring voice. But I used this preamp to kind of give it all this analog lift. And then
Mhm.
I felt more confident about what I was doing. But I was using a lot of, I was using a lot of, I'm a techie, so I was using all kinds of external things to like treat my voice, maybe not my natural voice, figuring out how to make it sound better before I treated it. But
Yeah.
I was just
Yeah.
spending time like treating maybe like the backwards approach.
You know, I
But
would I would tell you as a vocal coach that you've got an amazing instrument. Your speaking voice is wonderful. If anything, just using more of your eyes will give you more expression than you've ever had, and more also also if your voice ever gets tired, it'll also help with that because it opens up the throat channel. And here's another interesting thing with people that don't like their speaking voices recorded. Sometimes it's because they've never recorded them, and our ears are here. We don't really know what other people hear in
yeah,
our voices because we're hearing them from the side of our head. So when you record yourself back, you kind of get used to it, like, oh, that is me. And
yeah.
then you play with it. You just like, what would happen if I made my eyes like crazy, or if I dropped my jaw like crazy, or if I moved my head back a little, and just experiment with facial language and body language is what I would suggest to everybody listening. And you may find more voice than you even knew you had. And as far as how you find your unique voice, if
Hmm.
you open up all the doors and windows of your resonance, I think you're going to find out that nobody else sounds exactly like you. Maybe your brother or sister might sound pretty much like you, but you're going to add your life history, your life story, the way you interact with people, that colors your voice as well. Because the thing about opening your throat is that it gives your voice options, right? Of colors and all kinds of nuance, but it's in delivering messages that connect you with someone that tells your lizard brain what to pick from those
Mm.
nuances that you've made available to it. I've got a thing I tell everybody, kind of a saying, and it's that the voice wants access to movement.
That's interesting. Yeah, because I mean, there's a difference like in live performance versus studio performance. Because like if you're in a band, right, and you go live, you feel the need to perform, like to kind of do stage and stage craft type stuff.
Uh-huh,
Where if you're in
uh-huh.
the studio, you might just stay stable, not really moving right on the mic, right? You're just gonna stay right in the booth. But when you
And
go
that's
to
where somebody it's where somebody needs to turn the lights off in the vocal booth and let you do your thing.
yeah. Because
Really.
when you go live, you see that, they will get singers of running around,
Yeah.
bouncing around.
Of
They
course, you
get
can't do
really
that, but
animated. You
yeah.
can't do that, but
Yeah.
there ends up being a different sound to
Yeah,
like,
you can move.
a live band. Like Roger Daltrey when he's singing The Who live and he's twirling his mic and he's running around versus when he's on the mic in the booth. The live sound there's a very big difference into what it sounds like. And I'm
I've
like,
got a whole course called Singing in the Studio that explains why that is and how you can fix those things, how you
"Mm,
can, the workarounds for those things. One is really to take your stage experience in your mind, like we're talking about a couple of minutes ago, in your imagination, and go there in your imagination. Really shut down the lights in the vocal booth and be willing to use your hands and move a little bit on the mic, and dance a little bit around, as long as it's like dancing with a partner where you want to, stay present with them on the mic, but your body
Mm.
can move around. And you really can get even better than you can on stage if you can go there in your imagination. So it helps to shut out other sensory input. Like, don't be looking at the producer that's looking down at their equipment and going, "Oh, something's wrong." And it's really about the equipment, not because he thinks you suck.
Yeah, yeah, the problem is they could get too distracted by
Yeah,
all kinds of things,
yeah.
and, what's interesting what I started doing is, I like to do stream of consciousness demos,
Ooh,
and I go live as part of
oh,
my recording process where I would actually do live rehearsals and tape it.
yeah,
Because then I go through the tape, kinda like, the guy got me into that was I was reading about Frank Zappa, and Frank Zappa used to like to record a lot of his stuff live and go right to a like, he had a a recording unit, and he would record, like, all his concerts, and he would go back to his house and listen to the tapes and then put together albums from the live stuff,
yeah,
and I'm like,
right,
that I thought that was a really Neil Young used to do it too, and I thought
yeah.
that was really cool because there's something about taking that live performance, it does sound different, and I think these
There's the
guys
audience, yeah,
did
yeah,
find
there's
did
the
find it, did find
mhm,
something that was different about it.
yeah. Yeah, there can be some magic, and sometimes the magic is in the imperfection, the note they didn't quite hit, or the crack in the voice that sounded like emotion, and also they're they're really the audience listening is a part of the equation of the performance.
Hmm,
So that's
yeah,
why in the studio, people that are really good with doing that in the studio can take that and imagine themselves there and actually do it,
project
as if they were
as if they
there,
were
right.
live. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
probably the
And
best
you have
technique.
to use your imagination. Mhm.
Yeah, 'cause if you can imagine, yeah, like you say, you stop looking at the producer, you stop looking at the recording and engineer that keeps, like, going up, thumbs down. It's like, forget about that and just go with it and kinda put yourself into the zone. And, I
Mhm.
find when people are saying, "Well, how can you perform online in COVID," right? Because, like, I
Mhm.
I I get a lot of musicians say, "Well, I can't do well unless I have a studio, unless I have an audience, because I feed off the audience." And they tell you, like, I don't wanna go online because I can't get that feel." But what I
Mhm.
said, you gotta kinda get into your head and make yourself like what you're saying, you kinda use your imagination to get really into like, if you're a musician, like, I'm really into my song. I'm so into my song, like, I'm gonna get in a zone, and
Mhm.
I'm not gonna
Right,
care, and I'm gonna
right,
just do it. And so I'm not gonna obsess about, like, I can't tell what the audience is thinking. Well, then you're gonna be all like, all not knowing what you're doing. You're like, "Well, I'm not confident that this is going over." You
right,
have to, like, not care about that and actually just
right.
do it.
Here's an interesting you may find this interesting, especially with the experience you've had and the way, you've experimented with things too. There's a difference between being an entertainer and being an artist, and the most successful, I think, are both. But if you can wrap your head around this, it can help you in the studio for anybody that's listening. And that is an entertainer is talking to the fourth wall, as they say in acting. They are talking to but it needs to be always one heart, the one
Mhm.
heart of the audience. And you can move the heart around to different parts of the venue, but it needs to be like you're talking to the one heart.
One
Garth,
person.
Bono of
Yeah,
U2, they do that really well. They make everybody there feel like they're only there for them.
yeah, they're only
And
talking
then,
to them.
right, right. And then when you're singing your song, then, like an actor going into a reading of a script, go into character. Talk to that bad bad relationship person, or talk to the love of your life, or the one you think will be the love of your life, or your dog, if you're having to do a love song and you don't particularly not in love with somebody at the time. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Do use borrow from acting technique, and really talk to the heart that the lyrics that are coming out of your face are to the heart, not the audience when you're singing, "I can't make you love me if you don't," okay?
yeah, yeah.
That's
Like
not to the audience.
Meatloaf was always like 'cause he had theater. I like Bowie, I like Freddie Mercury, I like Prince
Yeah.
because when
Oh
they
my
went on
goodness.
stage, they were like actors. because they
Yes.
were. I mean, there was a lot of theater in what everything Freddie Mercury was doing. It
Yes.
was total theater.
Yes.
If you look at, Bowie, man, he would create characters and he would stay in character like a method actor.
Right.
They
Right.
said he stayed in
Right.
Ziggy for months. He stayed in Ziggy Stardust.
Yeah.
He actually didn't. He came off the stage and he was still Ziggy. He wouldn't
Yeah.
stop being Ziggy. He stayed in it. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, sometimes I think it is like I've talked to a lot of musicians and they say there's kind of like this other them, this other you, like the looking glass, and they see this other person. They kind of project
Mhm.
this kind of hyper version of themselves.
Right.
It's
And
not
if
exactly themselves, but it's this other version.
Right. And Sanford Meisner says that great acting is behaving authentically in fictional circumstances. That's what we have to do when we're singing a song. We can sing a song that's not where we are right now, but it can't be out of our realm of experience.
Mhm.
So if you're having to sing a song you really, really you can't get in touch with, you take that one out of your set.
Yeah,
If you're
yeah,
if you're
just find
doing
out
if you're
what
a demo singer and you're having to sing it and you agreed to sing it, then you're gonna have to go there. I'm sorry. You're just gonna have to go there and be that character. But when you're an artist, you can, and if you're a background singer, okay, you have to take on the story of the artist. But
yeah,
it's
you do.
always got to, you got to know what the lead sled dog of your brain is going, like where are they going? Where are they, what destination are they headed for?
Mhm.
And then get everything, line your sensory array up and really go in that direction. And
I
then
think that
all of a sudden, all of the I can't do it, online because I'm not having an audience. I don't have an audience in front of me. That goes away because your brain is all focused into one goal. Let me get a response to what I'm saying, from that heart I'm saying it to. And then when you come up from air out of this, it's almost like you're done with a reading from a script. And then you're back with the audience and you're like talking about that song, and you're all back. And it's
yeah,
really
I mean, if you're
cool. It
doing
really is a lot of stage presence.
that makes sense because if you're an actor, you're doing the reading, you might not have the whole crew there. You don't have like, you might just be doing it to a small group of people. So you do have to put
Exactly.
yourself in that zone. And I think musicians, there's a lot of theater in what we do. And
Exactly.
the more that you realize that, then you can be in any scenario, whether you're
Mhm.
home or in the booth or on a big stage for like
Mhm.
300,000 people at a festival.
Right.
That's what your preferred place is, like that
Right.
festival
Right.
stage with the 300,000. You gotta be able to put that in your head when you're in the booth, or when you're on,
Exactly.
you know? You gotta be able to do
Exactly.
the same thing. So,
Mhm.
I get it. I get what you're saying. So, so how can you avoid the vocal fatigue? Because you got some forms of music, if you get into, like, grunge and heavy metal and punk that can do things to your voice. I've heard of, like, artists where they didn't have the training. They were just they just destroyed it because they're in such a heavy genre that
Right.
demands like almost like doing really bad things to your voice
Right.
because you're kind of not trained and you're just doing it. Oh, I'm a punker. It's like, well, you can't just keep screaming forever or you're gonna damage yourself.
Right. Uh, there are several coaches, and I'm one of them, that do work with that kind of extreme voices like that. And the thing is, I have come to the opinion that you never have to damage your voice. The
Mhm.
most abusive vocal stuff is really in voiceover where you're having to uh, do really harsh sounding characters like that.
Mm.
But even after that, you can do vocal warm downs or cool downs to help your voice get back. But if you're singing regularly, you can sing really loud as long as you're what I call pulling it instead of pushing it. So
Oh,
if I go like I'm gonna move off mic a little bit, but if I go, yeah, 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 now, I could do that all day long
okay.
because I'm pulling it instead of pushing it, which I don't even want to do because I would, my voice would spasm a little bit just from doing it once forward. So I feel, the screams and all that. If you're screaming backwards, it's like a recoil.
Mm.
and you scream backwards. And what you're doing is two things. You're opening your throat and you're widening the bottom of your rib cage, which is your control lever. So you can sing as loud as you want to, as long as you're controlling as much as you're
Mhm.
supporting. So the louder you want to be, the more control you got to apply. And that has a lot to do with posture. It has to do with mic technique, where you're doing that instead of that.
Oh.
And so there's ways that you can do it, but pulling, it goes for speakers as well. Pulling your voice instead of pushing it is the way to go.
That's I think that's really good advice because we've got a lot of producers that watch this show and they've never decided to actually go to a vocal coach or because they just
Oh yeah.
they're doing whatever they're doing and they didn't even think about it. So I think it's really great that you're here with this advice because I think anybody who's a producer, anybody who's actually in a band or a singer songwriter, they might have been just fell into it and have a natural talent, but never thought to actually do the training.
Well,
Unless they've got
exactly. You've
able
hit a really,
to
really good
broaden to that.
point there. Yeah. Yeah. Because there's some great voices that have gotten in trouble because they're successful and they have to do it a lot and they get tired from the red eyes they have to take, and the first thing in the morning, those plane rides and don't get enough sleep and the sound check's got to happen. And they're human and they get tired. So what do you do when you get tired? You slump. Or you
Yeah.
push hard instead of pull. You don't even know to pull. So you push harder to get your voice over. And that's going to give you vocal fatigue, which can lead to vocal strain and then lead to vocal damage. So we want to get the cycle going back the other way. And if you get targeted vocal exercises that teach your lizard brain, your automatic nervous system, to pull no matter what your voice needs to do, then you really can stay protected.
I think that's really good for emerging bands because what happens is a lot of bands that they kick, and the way they kick is they just do extreme amounts of touring, and
Yeah.
they might
Right. Right.
might not even have a really great record deal that's actually going to give them access to somebody like you. They're just going to
Right.
be in their mini band and their econoline band going from gig to gig to gig to how to push it. They build a fan base, and the thing they're ignoring is their voice. They're
Mhm.
they're
You
just
know,
pushing without thinking about what they need to protect the voice, you know?
right. Here's a really protective thing that they can do, like that doesn't take a lot of training. Where they put the mic. Like for a boom stand for a guitar player, they need to bring the stand into them. They need to walk into the stand and bring the mic, make the mic for like 45 degrees like that. If they're standing at a mic like I'm standing at this mic, like
Mhm.
this, then they're not going to drop their rib cage so much, and they're going to open their throat up a little bit. So they want to bring, if they're playing guitar or piano, they want to walk in so that their head has to go back, or they'll bite the mic, right?
Oh, wow,
So
that's a
guitar,
good
and
to know.
if you're using your
Hand
handheld,
mic, yeah.
then you use it to kind of pull. You see people doing this all the time and you don't realize that's what they're doing.
So they
They may
actually
not even know
yeah,
that's what
maybe
they're
they
doing.
found it. Do you think
Yeah,
there's some, like,
right. Oh
vocalists,
yeah,
they just found it because they sing so much,
absolutely.
they found what was comfortable
Absolutely.
and what was
Absolutely.
and then maybe they've gone to somebody like you and realized they can make it better by actually
Well, or
taking
they
the
can
things
do
they
it on
found.
purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it just seems like, because some people might have a natural talent for it and they figured some things out, but I think, yeah, you always through education and training, you're always gonna get better. You're
Yeah.
always gonna find a better technique, and, I think as all musicians, like, your voice is an instrument. When I've had people like, "Oh, he's a vocalist." It's still an instrument. That's
Oh
their
yeah.
instrument. It's not
Yeah.
just like maybe they're not we have a pure vocalist that's not playing an instrument, you
Yeah.
know? Uh, it's an instrument. And so you
Absolutely.
still have to be able to take care of it, like anything that you do with your
Hmm.
physical. Keep it in tune, and you make sure that you take care of it, and so it's gonna give you that performance you need every time you have to go on stage or you have to go in the studio. You have to do
Right.
something. You can't just ignore it.
Right. Oh, I can give you another really cool tip that you don't have to train too hard to get, and that is use pineapple juice. The bromelain
Wow.
enzyme in pineapple juice soothes the tissues of the pharynx and hydrates it. So I have people put like a quarter pineapple juice and 3/4 water so that it doesn't add to acid reflux. And now,
Mhm.
unless you're allergic to pineapple juice, of course. But if you're not allergic to pineapple juice, try diluted pineapple juice, whether you're doing speaking or interviews or whatever, or you are singing, and put that in your water bottle on stage. Diluted pineapple juice. The people that I work with don't hardly go into the studio or stage without it.
Wow. That's a cool thing. I
Mhm.
don't think a lot of people would know that, unless somebody told them. So, so, so we were talking about how to avoid the vocal fatigue, but then what are the responsibilities of a successful voice? Like that's an interesting statement. It's like, so what does that, what are the things that make up the responsibilities?
Well, this is what I believe, that if you're a successful voice, that means you're an influencer. So that means you're responsible for how you're influencing your audience. So, it doesn't mean we don't need to sing songs about darkness and songs about pain and things that are kind of negative. But what I believe, and write them, and play, dark music and all that, heavy metal and those things that the spirit kind of needs to express ourselves with. But somehow I believe in the language within the genre you're working, that you need to use your material and bring the darkness into the light somehow.
Mhm.
Even if, even a cautionary tale. And I know there's some rap stuff that I really respect that talk about life in a way like, don't do this, like this
Yeah,
is going to
life
lead to a
lessons.
place you
Yeah,
don't want to go.
yeah,
And so that's leading into the light. And each one of us have our own stories, our own realities, our own worldviews, but we're all about love. We're all should be about love. And I think creators tend to be that. And I think that we need to just have somebody say it, maybe like me or like you, that yes, you are responsible for what you put out into the world. So make it good.
yeah. Well, I'm a kind of like I'm a believer in telling stories. And
Mhm.
usually when you tell a story, there's like some kind of moral to the tale, right?
Right.
Like there's gonna be like, why did this
Right.
happen? What did they do to make that happen?
Right.
Did they resolve it? Did they not resolve it? Right. So
Yeah.
if you're writing a story, your typical Bob Dylan song, you see some characters going through something, they're successful or they're not successful, or something
Yeah.
happened to them. It's a story, and it has
Right.
beginning, middle, and an end, and there's a result of what they did.
Yeah.
You
Like
know,
Dylan's, "Don't think twice, uh, that's all right?" The
yeah,
thing
yeah,
is that's the sweetest and funniest and most profound kiss-off song I've ever heard. But the cool thing is,
how
the
we did it.
message is, yeah, it's like, you just I'm not saying you treated me unkind, you just kinda wasted my precious time, so
Yeah, so he
you
still
know,
said it. He still
and the
said
thing is
it.
that helps people that
Yeah,
need to let go of a toxic relationship, right? So
yeah.
it's like that bringing that negative into the light.
Like, if you think about Tangled Up in Blue, it's a song about his divorce, but it's
Yeah,
not immediately apparent because he
yeah,
never comes out and says it. It just
yeah,
is implying that it's about the breakup of somebody's relationship, and he kinda puts other characters into it.
yeah.
He puts he acts like he's like another person, and he puts
Mhm,
him into these different roles. Like, did he really go out to the great North Woods and be a cook? He creates these, like, situations where he's telling the story, and he's like, "What does that mean?"
mhm,
It's really like you get the picture of him in a bar, you
mhm,
know? You get the picture of him in the great North Woods as a cook, and he's that sound painting type of thing where he's actually creating the scene, like a whole scape, like a screenplay.
mhm.
And I think when you do that, that's a very positive type of song in terms of even as talking about the story about his like a relationship falling apart. It's just the creativity in it that it feels like even today when I listen to anything off of that album, I'm like, wow,
Mhm.
the depth of him actually addressing it. He was doing social consciousness, and then he actually took that skill set and talked about what was going on with him.
Yeah, and it
And
kinda speaks people's pain out so that they
yeah,
can,
became
it's a kind
positive
of
in
a
that way.
cathartic experience, yes, and then they go like, "So it's not just me," you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, because I think singer-songwriters can take the pain of a situation and make it
Right,
universally understood, so then everybody who is feeling that way can go put Tangled Up on Blue in Blue, and then they
right,
feel like that. They feel
wow,
like, "Okay, I have"
and
Dylan
process
understood
it.
it.
Uh-huh,
Yeah, he went through it, so I now I actually can kind of feel, positive about it. Can you feel good about the song, even though it's like
mhm,
a maybe somewhat negative, but it's still something that's creative. I think he took the energy to take pain and put it into art.
mhm,
I think
yep.
that's what we try to do
Oh
as
my
songwriters.
goodness.
Y
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh. There's so much about art that does express pain and it helps people in very deep ways, like not avoid or say this is what we need to not do or something.
yeah,
So it's not that still leads to the light, to expose an inequality, to expose, something that happened. That's all leading into the light. It's helping human beings process. And if we did it enough, and man, I all we need is love and a little more art like
like
that.
the Beatles. Yeah. Well, yeah,
Yeah,
that's the only thing about the whole about the Beatles was that, like, they had this message, by the time they get to Abbey Road, basically are still telling people to kind of believe in that, but they've
yeah.
gotten to be really great songwriters, and they got very diverse in structures. With
Mhm,
very had tons of movements,
mhm.
multiple songs that are part
Oh
of,
my
like,
goodness.
it's like early progressive rock on Abbey
Mhm.
Road because you've got multiple songs that are strung together as like a classical type of structure, but it's rock. And it's
Right.
going from one thing to the next and different timing, different key pitches. It's just very, then you get bands like Pink Floyd and stuff that can take it further. But the
Yeah,
idea
and
of
Bohemian Rhapsody.
yeah, the Queen taking
Yeah,
it even further that what
right.
you could do, that you can take
Yeah,
this multiple song structure and build these big epics.
right.
Um, they're kind of based on poetry, like epic poems. Rock started taking the idea of an epic poem and actually putting it into play. You
Mhm.
know, on the great songs, "Stairway to Heaven" is kind of like a poem. It basically
Oh,
is a poem
yeah.
that ends up
Yeah.
being this epic song that goes through these changes, and it just like it goes up and down like a classical piece of music. And
Mhm.
I just think, I'm very much in the singer-songwriter age where people would try to put their best effort and make a statement rather than today where you tend to have like a club banger or just a hook and not have the structure. I'm kind of really into like that Beatle structure of a song or even the Motown structure of a song or Stevie Wonder on the songs The Key of Life. That level of
Mhm.
structure is like, where's that?
The
But
song, oh, my gosh. You know what? It's never gonna die. It will reinvent itself and come back. Yeah, because
yeah, yeah, like structure.
that really is where it is. It's not all about the tech. It's for even though those of us that know about tech, it needs to be used in the service of delivering a message. And if the message is just, it's
But
not gonna
kinda
be
like
very,
if
very
it's just
powerful.
yeah, you can make a beat that can make
Yeah.
everybody wanna dance,
Yeah. Yeah.
but then you go back to disco and it was a little more inventive.
Yeah.
You go back at what the Bee Gees did,
Yeah.
what Kool and the Gang did, or like Earth, Wind& and Fire did. You can make the
Oh
dance
my
song and it's
gosh.
relatively
Oh,
complex, with
oh
like
my god.
really big horn sections,
Right.
very intricate vocal layering. But then you
Right.
get people that, "Well, I got a dance song," and it's like boom, 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 falling on the floor. It's
Yeah.
like, "What? Is it?"
Yeah, I'm into the song. And I'm not into just one, era,
Yeah, I like multiple
but
genres.
or one genre, but it gotta speak to me,
Y
so
you gotta have, like, so the idea of having a vocal sound that can affect your message delivery,
mhm.
what are techniques
Yes.
to do that?
Well, if you sound like monotone, then the message is gonna be, "I'm bored with this and you should be too," you know? If you sound crazy and over the top. You're going to be like, I really want you to like me, and that's not going to really get the response you want either. So it's like using your body language and picking from all this movement that you give your voice access to be authentic with the person that you're talking to. So the way, you can say something, we know you can say the same 4 words and mean 4 different things.
Yeah.
Like, you better not do that again. You better not do that again.
Yeah.
You better not do that again. You better not do that again. All
Yeah.
those things mean different things, and I'm
Oh,
talking to
yeah.
different people.
Yeah. Because one of them is like a joke, and one of them you really didn't mean it.
Right,
So
right.
yeah, it's like
And one of
how
them
an
is pretty
actor.
serious. Yeah.
Yeah. So the actors can interpret things, and I think musicians, again, it's like the theater reference. I think we have to take a lot of what an actor does, what you just showed to everybody, that you can take the same set of words, but how you deliver them can
Right.
be interpreted totally differently. Like, you could
Right.
mean like,
And if I'm singing, if I'm going to I could demonstrate it with singing. If I go, I can't make you love me if you don't. Who believes that? That's just like me trying to win American Idol. If I go, I can't make you love me if you don't. Oh, that's boring. I can't make you love me if you don't. That might get across.
yeah,
But I'm not
'cause
talking to the audience when I do that. I'm not talking to you when I do that. I'm talking in the movie scene to this person who's going to lose me. So you have to go there.
yeah, well, I think is you got to channel that emotion, and that's what I like.
Right.
When I was kind of talking about like Neil Young, and if you think about like when he did his like Nashville type records, where he was like very controlling on his pitch and doing like perfect for vocal performances, but then he went and did Tonight's the Night, and when they asked him about it, what are you doing, he said, well, I decided to go into the ditch. He said, what do you mean? It's like I wanted to do something that was imperfect, because I was
Yes.
spending all this time in Nashville
Yes.
trying to make it perfect.
Yeah.
And then when you listen to Tonight's the Night, it's like it is perfect in its imperfection. And it's like
Exactly.
it's happy accidents. It's kind of almost like off pitch, kind of like almost tears in his voice.
Yep.
And then Neil is really good at doing this thing where it's so evocative that you feel like he's crying.
Absolutely.
That
Absolutely. So is Bruce Hornsby. I saw him do it live. One of my
he can do that.
students was singing, was playing fiddle and singing backgrounds with him, John Maylander. So I went to see the opening of his tour, and Bruce Hornsby, he would just disappear until like almost you'd think there was something wrong with his voice. I thought maybe he's lost his voice for just a second, for like, I don't know, 3 lines. And then all of a sudden he totally opened up his voice. Like he was just playing with the audience. It was so incredibly effective. So I say what we're not looking for is perfection. What we are looking for is magic. And sometimes the magic is in, just like you said, the imperfection.
Well, it's like the happy accidents. And I always tell producers I work with them in their dog, and they're sitting there trying to make it perfect. I say, you know what? If you did that and you were working on Next Hour on Main Street, you would have destroyed it.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
Can I go and they show them examples of the past? Like, there's a lot of happy accidents in Exile on Main Street. There's a lot of errors in Todd Rundgren's The Hello, It's Me, right? If you actually listen to it, you can hear all kinds of errors in it. And it's like, it's good that they're there because it's a great song, but it's not perfect. And something
It's
not being
human.
perfect. Yeah, it's more human, and it's like you got to go for that instead of sitting there trying to make it perfect because you're taking all the life out of it.
Exactly.
Well, I think we were at like an hour, and so we like to go and do like an hour because we have our partners. They don't like to go over an hour on our distribution. But I think it was great talking to you. I think a lot of producers and musicians that we talk to are going to appreciate this episode, and I'm going to actually tell people I work with that they need to watch it.
Great, great, great. Well, it was fascinating to talk to someone that's as passionate about it as you are, because it's like, "Oh, I found somebody that knows how good this stuff is or could be,
Oh,
and
it's
loves
brilliant.
musicians and loves the art too." So,
Well, it's brilliant.
thank you so much for having me on the show.
It's just fantastic. I think it's great to have everybody to always, when you find somebody that's really passionate about the
Yeah,
craft
right.
and is trying to help the craft by doing the work you do. It's like being a teacher, being a mentor, being a coach. You're really, you're helping everybody in the field we're in. And I think that's very important, to have that, and you should be celebrated for that. So I'm very
Thank
happy
you.
to have you on
Thank
the
you,
show.
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And
Great to meet
again,
you.
great to meet you too. Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.